The dojo remained in silence that autumn afternoon, while the last rays of the setting sun filtered through the traditional windows, casting long shadows on the tatami worn by decades of practice incessant. For 40 years I had dedicated my life to martial arts, seeking the perfection in every movement, in every breath, in every moment of absolute concentration. My name is Hiroshi Tanaka, and I never imagined that my search for the physical excellence would lead me to a revelation that would transcend the limits of the existing sane. The demonstration there was started like any other in that seemingly ordinary day. My students, some of whom they had been following my teachings for decades, they observed with attention while he was performing a particularly complex kata. The air was vibrating with the tension of the absolute concentration. Every movement flowed with the precision that only the years of practice they can grant. It was so when it happened. A sharp, piercing pain pierced my chest like a katana invisible. The world began to spin, the colors faded, and the last image I recorded was my son, his horrified face, elderly in a hurry toward me. The darkness that enveloped me was not the emptiness that one might expect. It was dense, almost tangible, as if it were submerged in an ocean of ache. I didn't feel cold, there was no heat, there was no above nor down, just a feeling of being suspended in an infinite space. Gradually, I began to perceive flashes of light, like distant stars in a darkling nocturnal. But these lights, they seemed to have awareness own, moving with a purpose that could not grasp. While floated in this indefinite space, I began to hear voices. They were not voices in the conventional sense. It was more as if the thoughts of other beings will resonate directly in my consciousness. Whispers from past lives, fragments of conversations that crossed the centuries. And in amidst all this ethereal cacophony, one voice stood out with crystal clear. The laws that govern the physical universe is just a reflection of deeper truths, he said, the voice. And when I turned around, if I really moved, in this space dimensionless, I found myself in front of a figure that I recognized instantly despite never having seen him in person. Sir Isaac Newton. It was not the Newton of the historical portraits, with wig powdered and elegant clothes. This Newton seemed simultaneously younger and older, as if the time would have lost all meaning. His eyes, they shone with a supernatural intensity, containing knowledge of centuries and the weight of revelations unnameable. Master Tanaka, he continued, and of the fact that he knew my name, neither I was even surprised in this kingdom where the rules normal of the reality seem suspended. You have dedicated your life to understanding the motion of the human body. Just like me, I dedicated the mind to understand the movement of the celestial bodies. But we both have committed the same fundamental error. His words resonated in my being with a force that transcended the physical sound. I found myself captivated by his presence, by the depth of his gaze that seemed to contain entire universes. What is that mistake? I dared to ask, and my voice sounded strange in this timeless space. Newton extended his hand, and the space to our everything around us changed. Suddenly, we found ourselves surrounded by a visual representation of the cosmos, galaxies and stars, dancing in a silent symphony of eternal motion. Look, he said, every star, every planet, every atom follows the laws that I discovered. Gravity, the movement, light, everything can be measured, calculated, predicted. I dedicated my life to deciphering these patterns, to reveal the secrets of the physical universe. And yet, her voice cracked for a moment, laden with an emotion that seemed out of place in a being of his intellectual stature. And yet, I failed in seeing the most important thing. While I was chasing knowledge of the outside, I ignored the inner wisdom. While I calculated the forces between the celestial bodies, I forgot to calculate the moving forces the human soul. The galaxies to our around continued his cosmic dance as Newton continued with his revelation. Look at this star, he said, pointing toward a spot bright that seemed to pulsate with a life of its own. We can calculate its mass, its temperature, the speed at which it moves through the space. We can predict when we'll die and what will remain after. But can we calculate the impact that its light has in the soul of a poet who contemplates her in a night solitary? Can we measure the inspiration that provokes in a child who dreams with exploring the cosmos? His words resonated inside me with a truth that went beyond the intellectual understanding. While I was observing his celestial spectacle that surrounded us, I began to understand what Newton was trying to do, transmit to me. Throughout my life as a martial arts teacher, I had sought the technical perfection, the precision in every movement, the accuracy in each position. But how many times I had ignored the emotional impact that my teachings they had in my students? How many times there was overlooked the spiritual growth in favor of the physical excellence? Newton seemed to perceive the course of my thoughts. Exactly, Master Tanaka. You and I are not so different. We have both dedicated our lives to understanding the laws that govern the physical world, whether it be the movement of the planets or the flow of the energy through the human body. But there are a deeper, more meaningful realm that we have neglected in our search for the technical perfection. The space to our around changed again, and we found ourselves floating over what appeared to be Cambridge in his 17th century. I saw a young Newton, absorbed in his studies, ignoring the world around him surrounded. "Look," said my companion, with a leaf sadness in his voice. I passed years locked in my room, contemplating the light, experimenting with prisms, developing the calculation. I revolutionized the human understanding of the universe, yes, but to what cost? I never married, never started a family, never allowed true love into my life. I was so busy measuring the strength of the gravity that I forgot to measure the force of the human heart. The scene changed again, and now we were in what seemed to be the Royal Society. I saw the mature Newton, engaged in bitter disputes with other scientists, fiercely defending their work and its reputation. "Vanity," he continued, "is a force as powerful as the gravity. It attracts us toward the center of our own ego, makes us believe that our discoveries are the only thing that matters. But I'm telling you now, after centuries of reflection, in this realm between worlds, the knowledge without compassion is emptiness, the wisdom without love is sterile." While I spoke, I felt something changing inside me. Every word of Newton seemed to resonate with a truth that always there was known, but had never been able to articulate. I thought in my own students, and as had insisted on the technical perfection, while maybe neglected his growth as complete human beings. The real one enlightenment, Newton continued, does not come from understanding the laws of the physical universe, but to understand the laws of the human heart. My discoveries changed the way in which the humanity go the cosmos, but I failed in changing the way humans see themselves in each other. That is the true work that remains to be done. The scene to our around was transformed once again, and now we found ourselves floating in what seemed to be a vast ocean of consciousness. Lights of different colors and intensities surrounded us, each representing, according to I understood, a different soul in his own journey of discovery. "Look at these souls," said Newton, pointing the lights that surrounded us. "Each one has his own orbit, its own trajectory, just like the planets. But unlike the celestial bodies, these orbits are not determined by the gravity but by love, the fear, the compassion, the curiosity. These are the true motors of the spiritual universe, forces that no one mathematical equation can capture." While as I reflected on his words, I began to see my own life in a new light. Every kata I had taught, every technique that had perfected, were not simply physical movements, but opportunities to convey something deeper. Lessons on the patience, the perseverance, the humility, the respect for oneself and for others. The real one mastery, Newton continued as the lights of souls danced to our around, does not reside in the mastery of techniques or formulas, but in the ability to touch and transform other lives. Each of your students are like a planet in orbit, Master Tanaka, attracted not only by your technical knowledge, but by something deeper that perhaps neither you same has fully recognized. While spoke, the lights began to form more complex patterns, intertwining in a cosmic dance that seemed to reflect the interconnections between all souls. "Observe how each light influences in the others," Newton noted. "Just like the gravity of each celestial body affects the movement of all the furthermore, every action, every thought, every emotion we experience has the effect in the tissue same as the existence." I found myself recalling specific moments from my career as a teacher. The young man student who arrived devastated after losing his father, and how the practices you helped find a new purpose. the middle-aged woman who overcame a deep depression through the discipline of dojo, the troubled teenager who found direction and self-control in martial arts. Each of them had been transformed not only by the techniques that I taught, but by something deeper that flowed through those teachings. Exactly, Newton said, reading my thoughts. Those are the true miracles, the true laws universals that we must study. Not only how the bodies move in his space, but how souls move toward the light. The space to our around changed again, and we found ourselves floating above my dojo, but from a perspective I had never experienced. I could see not only the bodies of my students practicing, but also the energies that flowed between them, the ties invisible ones that were formed, the transformation subtleties that occurred beyond of the physical plane. Your dojo, Newton explained, is not just a place of physical training. It is a gravitational field of spiritual transformation. Every person who enters there is drawn not only by the promise of physical ability, but by the possibility of inner transformation. Do you see? Those threads of light that connect everyone? Those are the true forces that hold your particular universe together. While I was observing the scene, I began to understand something fundamental about my own mission in life. It was not simply teach combat techniques or forms of movement. It was to create a space where people could discover his own inner light, your own spiritual gravitational force. But there is more, Newton continued, his voice taking on a tone of urgency. Just as I discovered that the same force that makes fall an apple keeps the planets in orbit, you must understand that the same power that transforms an individual can transform the whole humanity. Every person I meet at center in your dojo becomes in a new gravitational center that affects all who are in its surround. The images began to expand, showing how the influence of the dojo extended beyond its walls. I saw my students carrying what they had learned to their homes, their jobs, their communities. Each of them became in a beacon of light, creating its own fields of positive influence. It's a true legacy that you must build, Newton said firmly. It's not just about creating martial arts masters, but about forming beacons of light that illuminate the path for others. Every person who touches your life has the potential to become a star bright in the firmament of the humanity. The vision expanded even more, and I could see how every act of kindness, every moment of understanding, every instant of personal growth created ripples in the tissue of the reality, just like a stone thrown in a pond. These waves crisscrossed and amplified, creating patterns of beauty and complexity amazing. This, Newton said, pointed. The patterns that were formed, it is the true physics of the soul. It cannot be measured with instruments or expressed in equations, but it is as real and powerful as the gravity same. It is the moving force of the human history, which drives the evolution of the consciousness. I stood watching the patterns that Newton pointed out, marveling at the complexity and beauty of these interactions spiritual. The waves of energy intertwined, forming an intricate network of connections, each one glowing with his own intensity and purpose. It was like contemplating a visual symphony of the human soul, where each life contributed his own unique melody to the great concert of the existence. What you are witnessing, Newton continued in a voice that seemed to resonate from the depths of the cosmos, is just a fraction of the true nature of the reality. During my earthly life, I was proud to have decoded the mysteries of the physical universe, but now I see that there was hardly any graze the surface of an infinitely deeper ocean. While he spoke, the space to our around began to transform again. The waves of energy concentrated and took more defined forms, revealing scenes of interconnected lives across the time and the space. I saw one of my oldest students, now turned teacher, transmitting not only the techniques that he there was taught, but also values and the wisdom that he had absorbed over the years. His own students, in turn, carried those teachings to new places, creating a cascade of positive influence that extended beyond my understanding immediate. Notice how every action, every teaching, every moment of understanding multiplies exponentially, Newton explained. It's similar to the third law of the movement I discovered. For every action there is an equal and opposite reaction, but in the kingdom of spirit, the reactions are not simply the same. They are amplified and transformed in ways that defy all mathematical prediction. A new unseen materialized before us. I saw a young girl student who had arrived at my dojo years ago, tormented by the anxiety and lack of confidence. Through the practice and discipline, had found its center, its inner strength. Now I saw working as a therapist, using martial arts principles to help others find their own balance. Do you see? How does it work? Newton asked, pointing the ramifications of influence that emanated from this one transformed life. Each person you help is not simply a passive vessel of knowledge. It becomes an active channel of transformation for others. It is like a reaction in spiritual chain, but unlike the physical reactions, this does not decrease with time and distance, but grows and is enriched with each new interaction. The images continued flowing, showing more and more examples of transformed lives and the impact they had in the world. I saw a businessman who had learned the value of discipline and I respect in my dojo, applying these principles for creating a more humane and sustainable work environment. I saw a mother who, through the practice of martial arts, had found the patience and strength needed to raise their children with wisdom and compassion. Each of these people, Newton continued, is like a prism which refracts the light of the wisdom in a unique way. During my life, I became obsessed with break down physical light into its basic components, but now I see that the true wonder is in how each human being transforms and transmits the light of the consciousness in infinitely varied and beautiful ways. The space to our all around was filled with these spiritual refractions, each one shining with his own unique spectrum of colors and energies. It was a show overwhelming, which made my discoveries about light and color seem trivial in comparison. The real one, enlightenment, Newton continued, does not consist in accumulating knowledge, but in becoming a most effective conduit for light from the truth and the compassion. Throughout my life, I was so concerned with protecting and defending my discoveries that I forgot that the true purpose of knowledge is to be shared and transformed. The Newton's words resonated with a truth that penetrated every fiber of my being. The space at our around continues transforming, revealing new dimensions of understanding. Look, he said, extending his hand towards a series of scenes that unfolded before us. Each moment of teaching is like a seed planted in the garden of the universe. Before my eyes, I saw how these spiritual seeds germinated and grew, forming trees of wisdom whose branches extended through generations. Each branch represented a life touched, each leaf a lesson learned, each flower a new comprehension blooming in the someone's consciousness. During my years at Cambridge, Newton continued, his voice heavy with a mixture of nostalgia and regret, I isolated myself of the world, convinced that this solitude was necessary for the scientific discovery. But now I see that the true knowledge does not flourish in the isolation, but in the interconnection with other beings. The scenes changed again, showing moments from my own life in the dojo from a whole new perspective. I saw how every class, every demonstration, every casual conversation after of the training, there was created waves of influence that spread far beyond the walls of the dojo. In your martial arts practice, Newton explained, you have created something much more meaningful than a simple self-defense system. You have established a field of transformation where the laws of the spiritual growth operate as consistently as the laws of physics in the material universe. I observed amazed how every movement, every breath, every moment of concentration in the dojo generated energy patterns that intertwined with the energy fields of everyone present. It was like watching a cosmic dance where each participant contributed to a choreography greater than any of them could fully perceive in the physical play. This, Newton said, pointed, the patterns, it is what I called spiritual gravitation. Just as the body's celestials attract each other in proportion to its mass, souls attract each other in proportion to its level of consciousness and compassion. Every act of kindness, every moment of shared understanding, every instant of support mutual strengthens these gravitational fields spiritual. The vision expanded furthermore, showing how these fields of influence extended beyond the dojo, beyond the community immediate, creating a global network of positive transformation. I saw students who had passed by my dojo years ago, now scattered throughout the world, each creating their own centers of spiritual gravity. Do you see that student there? Newton pointed to a particular image. It was Mary, a young girl who had arrived at my dojo 10 years battling a deep depression. Watch how his transformation had created a new field of possibilities for others. I saw Maria working as a counselor in a school, using the principles of balance and centering that I had learned in martial arts to help teenagers in crisis. Every young woman she helped became in turn a new point of light in the cosmic network of transformation. The true master of martial arts that you have created, Newton continued, does not reside in the technical perfection of the movements, but in this capacity to generate fields of positive transformation. Each kata, each technique, each ritual in your dojo is like a mathematical formula that, when executed with full consciousness, releases healing and growth energies in the universe. The images followed flowing, showing more and more branches of positive influence. I saw an ancient student who had carried away the beginning of the dojo to your company, transforming a toxic corporate culture into a collaborative and respectful work environment. I saw another who used the meditation and breathing techniques he had learned to help war veterans with stress disorder post-traumatic. Each of these impacts, Newton explained, is like an experiment in the laboratory of the spirit. But unlike my experiments with the light and the gravity, these experiments of the soul produce results that go beyond any measurement quantitative. They transform the quality same as the human existence. Newton paused, and the space to our around was transformed once again. Now we were floating above a panoramic view of Earth, shining like a blue jewel in the empty of the space. Notice, he said, how each point of light we have seen contributes to the total luminosity of the humanity. From this perspective, I could clearly see how the networks of positive influence we had been observing were spreading across the planet, creating an intricate tapestry of light and energy. It was like contemplating a spiritual version of the current's oceanic or the weather patterns, where each individual action contributed to larger, more significant movements of consciousness collective. Your work in the dojo, Newton continued, is like an anchor point in this great transformation fabric. Every time you help someone find their center, to discover his inner strength, you are contributing to the stability and evolution of the entire system. The images began to show potential future scenes, possibilities unfolding like petals of a cosmic flower. I watched as the seeds of wisdom planted in the dojo could flourish in completely unexpected ways. Hospitals adopting meditation and conscious movement practices, schools integrating martial arts principles in your curriculum to develop not only bodies strong but also resilient characters, community centers transforming in spaces for healing and personal growth. What you're witnessing, Newton explained, is the potential latent in every teaching moment. Just as a small disturbance in a physical system can lead to dramatic changes over the course of time, every act of true teaching has the potential to catalyze transformations monumental in the human consciousness. While we were looking at these possibilities unfolding, Newton continued, during my life, I became obsessed with predict and control the outcomes of my experiments. But the true art of teaching, as you have uncovered in your dojo, consists of create the conditions for it to flourish at unpredictable, the miraculous. The scenes before us they showed now seemingly small but deeply significant moments of transformation. A student finding the courage to face a long repressed fear, another discovering an unexpected vocation through the disciplined practice, a third healing wounds deep emotional through the movement and the conscious breathing. Each of these moments, Newton said reverently, is like an equation being solved in the infinite book of the universe. But unlike the mathematical equations that so obsessed me in life, these equations of the spirit produce results that transcend all logic and measurement.